Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. Uh, I personally am in need of this conversation today. We are just in a time, in a moment. I don't know about you, but I'm in a time, in a moment where I'm sometimes afraid to go to my phone, go to the television, go to my computer, and what might seep through in terms of the news of the day. I'm actually anxious to hear what has been happening while I attempted to catch 9 hours of sleep. But in all of that, there are moments of peace. There are things to feel thankful for. There are blessings pouring in. That's a reminder. I'm reminding myself more than you. I'm literally pep talking myself today. Um, Hi, I'm Lindsay T.H. Jackson, and welcome to the Unlearning Book Club. Dun, 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 dun. In my mind, there's like music there that played. I don't know. We'll see what happens on the editing floor. We are so blessed, another blessing today, to have Marcus Harrison Green, author of Readying to Rise, Essays by Marcus Harrison Green, joining us today. Um, Here in Seattle, Washington, Marcus is a bit of a local celebrity. People follow him around like puppies, just like, please look at me, please pet me. Um, okay, yeah, me too. So excited that he is joining us here today. He is the editor, the founder of the South Seattle Emerald. He is a street reporter. He is a, author. Just all the things, making me feel like I should try to be a little bit more productive in my life. Marcus, how are you today?
I am well and better being able to speak with you today, I will say. Also, just so blessed to be here. And you said 9 hours of sleep. That sounds like heaven on earth to me. So I hope that I can also one day catch up on my sleep as well. Anyhow, but
Oh
uh,
my.
but wide awake to this morning. So glad to be with you.
Well, that's how we know you're the journalist, and I'm the person who is consuming your writing because I'm not following that news cycle. How is that? How is that treating you nowadays?
Ooh. Um, I
Woo!
gotta take a breath. It's just
Yes.
um I think it obviously very unrelenting and frenetic. I think it's been a time, that being said, of learning how to be more discerning, right, on what
Mm,
is just information versus what is actually pertinent
yeah.
and meaningful. Um, and in some ways, I don't want to call it a blessing in disguise or silver lining, but it has meant that you've that I think anybody who wants to continue in this in this industry of journalism, I think we've all had to learn new skills in the sense of like how to better identify things that actually matter and are meaningful to a mass populace of people. So.
Yeah, that's so. Before we get into the book, I really want to pick your brain about that because I feel like one of the things that I see a lot, I experience a lot, is why isn't the media covering this story? Why are they, allowing this kind of smoke and mirrors to take the attention off of the fact that a person who is protected under the United States uh, Immigration Act or alien escaping, was kidnapped and is now just being held essentially hostage in a prison. And uh, how do you figure out which story to push to the front?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say that I'll start off by saying that I do wish all media was maybe more congealed, if you will. than it is
Mhm.
in terms of uh, there are definitely actors in media who have their own interests at heart as opposed to the general population, you might say. That being
Mm,
said, in terms of being somebody who can only speak for myself and the organizations that I'm affiliated with, I think one of the sort of litmus tests that we have is, putting, quote unquote, putting every story on trial for its life, right? In the sense of
mm,
why does this need to exist? How is this helpful to our readership? How is this truly informing them? Um, and how does this, in some ways, how is this quote unquote unflooding the zone, right? Where there's such a just avalanche of information and an avalanche of, as you said, sensationalism and smoke and mirrors and things that quite frankly, won't matter tomorrow. What are the stories that are going to actually endure? What are the stories that are going to provoke thought? And by provoking thought, hopefully provoke action. Those are the stories that um, for us that we try to surface.
oh, wow. Well, let's talk about the book. Uh, there's so much packed in here. It's like a beautiful Alice in Wonderland adventure through Marcus Harrison Green's brain. Um, except at the end, you're not fighting a nasty queen. Instead, you're feeling a little bit more. Um, uh,
I'm as a friend of mine said, we all embrace our inner queen, I guess, at the end of it. We're
yes.
not fighting, we're embracing. But anyway.
Yes, mine's not so inner. I think I pushed my queen out to the
Yes,
front.
yeah.
Um, and all suitors beware. You better come to meet that queen energy. Um,
Absolutely.
what or how are you finding um peace in moments like this? In the essays, you kind of explore through the lens of everything that was happening after the murder of George Floyd and throughout the initial rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. But here we are again, or here we are every day dealing with the same systems and the same structures doing exactly what they were designed to do. How are you finding your peace or your stability through all of that? You said it's not sleeping, so what is it?
Yeah, I'll say I think it's where I'm being very starting to be, I shouldn't say starting, but continuing to be very mindful of where I put my attention. Um,
Mm,
Particularly in this day and age where I think there's so many demands upon our attention, right? Whether it's through advertising, whether it's through media, whether it's through our current government, which is always trying to snatch something from you, to snatch attention from you and snatch your brain space. And so for me, I think where I'm able to find peace is by truly being cognizant of what I'm paying attention to and attempting to be in a moment when I'm in the moment, right? And um not uh, not allowing something to not allowing my mind to wander to the point where I'm worried about 2 minutes from now or 3 minutes from now, or worried about, oh my gosh, what is going to come down next, right? It's truly just being here, in the now, right? And this is the moment that I know that I have. And so it behooves me to um, be fully present for it. I was on Sundays. I have this ritual, even though I think I expressed to you before when we did a panel discussion before that I'm not don't view myself as, yeah, I guess traditionally religious, but I do have a Sunday morning practice sort of born from my parents always taking me to church in the morning where I'll listen to a Unitarian sermon in the morning time. And this past weekend, I was listening to one where they talked about a culture that um, where living life itself, like fully living life, is their form of worship, right? Because
mm,
you
mm,
know it's it's expressing gratitude, fully living life is expressing gratitude for this blessing that we all have to be alive. And so for me, I look at it as, that really struck me as, oh, instead of constantly trying to rush from one moment to the next without appreciating um, this moment right now where we find ourselves in some ways is to diminish uh, diminish our time on earth, to diminish um, the life that we do have. And so for me, I'm not sure whether you would call that peace, but I'm able to sort of find um, I wouldn't call it peace, but I guess I would say I'm able to find sort of balance and equilibrium, by, being, truly in a moment and not being hurried, not being rushed, not being um, angst ridden, and, not being anxiety filled by, taking this moment as it comes. And I know that might sound cliche in some ways, but at the same time, it's working for me. So
No, I can completely relate to that. I have a similar on Sunday mornings. I normally play a mix of gospel music and sit and just try to, well, in Seattle, it could be any version of listening to the rain or staring out the window at the sun and just really experiencing um, the the little joys and blessings of my life. Maybe it's the sound of my children in the other room laughing at something or fighting over something.
right.
It's just experiencing the joy of being in my home that I am able to afford through my company, and the amazing people that I get to work with every day. The experience of living on my street, I've got the most amazing neighbors, and we all work to really build an community where our children feel safe, feel like they're thriving, our elderly feel safe, feel like they're thriving, right? Just that centering of what is it that life has already blessed you with, and really smelling it, tasting it, embodying it. So I completely agree, or not even agree, understand what you're talking about, that that tradition coming out, I think, for both of us, of the Black church, and that sense of community, that sense of you're going to be there half the day on a
Yeah.
Sunday
Yeah.
morning, right? So how can you recreate that? I love church. Sometimes I just don't like church folk,
Right.
is the issue.
I Yes. I'll just leave it there.
Yes, yes. That's another podcast. But let's use this as Lindsay's therapy session. I have been struggling lately, and I'd really love to get your thoughts on this in my own version of prayer, which is, you know, for me, it trips throughout the day, right? When I'm out on a walk, when I'm sitting on the floor of the shower, when I'm sitting on my couch staring at the window. For me, my experience of my God, goddess is not dependent upon. And what I mean by that, it's not dependent upon me being in a church. It's not dependent upon some teacher dictating to me what my spiritual practice should be. It is very
Right.
much embodied in the throughout of my living. And yet, starting last year with the sudden suicide of my friend, and through the uh, Trump administration, so many things, my relationship with my God, goddess, universe, I found there's been a bit of contention in it, right? There's been where do I put this
Right.
anger at the natural state of nature, right?
Mhm.
That is life and death. Where do I put this confusion or this hopelessness, helplessness, where I feel as though there's so much I want to do, but I can't do it all? Are you experiencing any of this, and how do you find your way through that, especially as somebody who's on the front line every day? You're seeing every kernel of the shittiness of humanity every day. How do you find that center? How do you find that your joy, your hope?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's for I think it's in two parts. One is the saying, right, that action absorbs anxiety, and so as hard as this job can be in terms of the constant, again, just the constant saturation of of news and so forth every day. I think being able to write different stories that are hopefully helpful to people, particularly on the local level, where
Mm,
they can take action. They know what to they feel empowered with which to do something, whether that's even if it's just like taking the example of our immigrant communities, folks being able to know what their actual rights are when if ICE were to come to their door or their places of worship or their school or so forth. And then I think one, on the personal level, I think being able to write down things and make a list of things that I hold, sacrosanct, or in the terms of these are the things that I know allow me to show up in the world as I want to show up in the world. These are the things that center me. These are the things that keep me grounded, but also keep me in a way of, in touch with the sublime, if you will, right? And so for me, right, that's, meditating in the morning, that's walking, that's working out 4 times a week, that's um,
mm,
having, conversations with, one-on-one conversations with friends or people in my life who I really enjoy being around, and making sure that I don't, uh, put those things aside, so often, making sure that I prioritize those things in my life as much as I would prioritize work or anything else. Um, I think we all have those things, right? That those rituals, whether it's walking, whether it's knitting, crocheting, creating, and I think, and I'll say this, I mean, I think in this period of destruction where so many institutions and ways of life, if you will, or at least understandings of society, are crumbling, what I found to be very helpful to me is just creating, right? And having an artist's mind of creating new things, right? And new ways of being, new connections, new relationships, and investing in relationships at this moment, investing in community in this moment. Um, that's where I think I've been able to find a level of optimism and possibility, if you will, right? And also just the knowledge base that the saying that, we've survived 100% of the worst days of our life so far. Um, so, we have a good track record, I guess.
mm, mm. You said something there that, I don't believe. I think so many people listening to this are not doing anything, right? They're doing their knitting, they're walking their dog, they are doing their business deals, and they are experiencing absolutely no community throughout all of that. Or or rather, and they are not moving from that hobby to any sort of action that is outside of their own pleasure or their own attempts to create safety. And you talk about in the book about your experience of bipolar disorder.
Mhm.
And, a lot of people use absolutely everything as an excuse to just check out, right? And so many people would use something like bipolar disorder to check, well, my therapist said, well, I, what is it that motivates you still to engage within community, to support various communities? Why are you not just using that as an excuse also to check out?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's selfish in the sense that being in community, at least for me, is very life-giving. We were this past weekend, I went to a farewell party for a friend. They were transitioning off of the South Seattle Remotes board after 70 years, and we like to say at the Emerald that you honor a relationship and how you say goodbye to it. And so we had a nice went to a nice restaurant, a Caribbean restaurant, and had a nice goodbye for the person. But um, being able to sort of just listen to them and what their time meant, being in a community organization, serving community, seeing so many people whose lives this person had touched and and had been touched through um, their relationship and affiliation, with our organization. Um, it was what I needed in that week, I tell you, because it was a super tough week. But to be able to just be around so many people where it's like we've built something together, right? Our work, our labor, our ingenuity, our laughter, our love, our our time, our effort, right?
Mm,
We've done this thing collectively. And for me, there's still, and look, people can be hard to deal with at times. They can
mhm,
irritate you, they can get on your nerves. I don't want to have a fully romantic sense, a fully romantic, accounting, I should say, of what it is to connect with people. But yeah, there is, at its peak, at its height, if you will, community can be such a life-affirming, life-giving, and um, just a showcase of what it is to be accepted and loved and understood and um in right relationship with people. And so I think that's the reason that I to answer your question, why it probably would be easier at times, right, to just stay home in isolation.
mm,
Particularly there are times, I certainly have dealt with social anxiety, but at the same time, I think that's overcome by the acceptance and love of community, right? And so even I always find it such a paradox here in American society where we sort of praise rugged individualism, and yet,
mm.
when people want to be quote unquote successful and praised and so forth, well, I mean, it's other people that are, doing that, right? I mean, it's other people. You need other people even in those scenarios with which uh, to be acclaimed. And, it's without naming any names. I mean, I think we see that now with extremely, very affluent folks, shall we say, who seem to be playing out their insecurities uh,
Yes.
within some of their roles in government, shall we say, and these people have all the money in the world, literally, and yet still are desperate for praise from folks and desperate for affirmation from people. And with all that money, they still can't really find community who are willing to accept them for for whom they are, not for what they have. And so for me, that's why community, basking in and being in community is so important because it's nurturing, it's healing. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm always saying to leaders is please stop playing out your mommy and daddy issues on
man.
the society around you or the people at your company, right? Like they no, that's not
Not
in the job
that.
function. Um, you spoke recently at our live Unlearning at Town Hall, and you were talking about the importance of storytelling and how stories weave through us and bond us and keep us connected. Is there a particular story from all of your years of I don't even want to call it interviewing people, the way that you connect and draw out a story from people. Is there a story that has particularly changed you?
Well, that's a great question. There's been so many there's been so many that I've sort of taken, bits and pieces from in terms of how they've shaped me. Um, I'll say just in sort of staying on the theme for a bit with mental health, I think when I was when I was first when I finally, I should say, accepted my diagnosis of a bipolar disorder and really delved into what it was to uh, live with bipolar disorder. I think one of the things I still hold in my heart is what a mentor told me, and they said, just so you know, just because you have you have mental health challenges, it doesn't mean that you're defective or diminished or defeated or
Mm.
minimized. What you are is just human. And, there have been times certainly that living with bipolar disorder has been very challenging. To myself, to my friends, to family. And to be able though to return to that, as simple as it is, um, has certainly been an anchor point, I think, in my life. And so that has definitely helped to propel me through some very difficult situations at times.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. There must be, something so um, healing maybe in having language for something, right? We can give something a name, bipolar disorder, and you can draw from so many people's stories of how they have lived through that, how they have been in relationship to their family, to their friends, to community, to work. Um, there's always something in that, often when I'm working in organizations where you're going, we're talking to HR and they're saying something like, oh, well, this team member has something like bipolar disorder, or, they're on the ASD spectrum. And, what should we think of that? I'm like, I don't think we need to be thinking about anything about that except for our accommodations. We need to be thinking about this CEO who's an absolute asshole to everybody. And we have no diagnosis to work with there. They
Right.
just seem to be an asshole.
Yeah.
What's the I digress. Um,
If the I wish just for a couple weeks you were in control of the world, Lindsay. That would be it would be such a better place. But
there
anyway,
would be a lot of dancing.
I'm here for it. I'm here for
Dance break at noon. Yes.
it.
Where our producers Tamika and Jay are on, they would be like, "Oh my God, there'd be so much dancing and singing breaks that they know they already have to suffer at random moments." And it's not real music; it's just me singing. Ah, I'm singing. I'm singing. That's from Elf. Don't
I
come for me.
I I may have to incorporate that in some of my business practices as well. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Do you know how many people actually love being sung to? It's like, I'm like, is nobody else singing to you, really?
We
This is a problem we could solve.
it needs
More leaders and managers need to develop some singing skills and just sing to your team.
I'm all for normalizing it, I gotta say.
Yes, yes, yes. And you don't even have to sing well. It's like with your children. My children are like, it's all right. Just just sing the lullaby. Go on. Or my daughter goes, no, we didn't hit that note, did we? I'm like, all right, go to sleep. Um, I want to finish today by Readying to Rise just covers absolutely so much that I think readers are really needing to immerse themselves in right now. And the way that you weave the essays together. I love the term essayettes, which is just like the cutest slash sexiest term in the world. And essayettes, right? Because much of our mind, or at least my mind, thinks like that, right? I don't want to do an entire book or thesis on this. Just give me the essay. Give me a short thought on that can absolutely revolutionize my life. And I think that Readying to Rise does that so well. Just really drops us in to a question or a thought and lets us weave us through it in a way that is just chef's kiss, as the kids say. But what I love the most is that while being extremely raw, being extremely clear about what we are up against, you are still hopeful. You are still hopeful. And I'm not cynical. I would consider myself a practical optimist, right? In that I think we benefit from knowing our history, knowing the way that people are generally socialized to relate to one another, and all of that begets the situation that we now find ourselves living through, which means that we can be creative in where we're going next. And that's what I want you to leave us to. Where do you think we're going next, Marcus?
Hmm. I think that depends, right? I think that depends on whether or not um, enough of us get to a point where we say enough, right? Enough of this,
Mm,
enough of where we are right now. And there ends up being a true solidarity, right? Where we can make common cause around a common future, right? That where we all flourish, where there, where we demand that nobody be alienated. We demand that we prioritize healing and um, everybody having a level of substance that they can survive on and exist, not just survive on, I should say, but be able to feel that they have the potential to do what they to sort of achieve their best self or their final form, if you will. And I think it goes back to what you said about the importance of storytelling and right and the story that too many people I think have adopted right now is that it's every person for themselves, right? And
mm,
that
mm,
this is a zero-sum game we live in, and I understand why people do, right? Because this is what has been conditioned to think, and this is what is at many times reinforced, right? If you can't be first, then at the very least, don't be last, right? Be above somebody, right? Be above the immigrant person, be above our trans community, be above whatever, right? Which is why, those communities are under assault at this moment. Be for other folks, it's be above, black people and this and that. And so I think when we get to a point where enough of us are reject this lie of sort of social hierarchy and realize that we truly are tied in this garment of destiny together, I think then we can have a future that, um, not to put too fine of a point on it, but we're, a future that is ready to rise and it is ours for the taking.
mm. I'll go for like a day and then you step in and then you lead for a day. I think that should be the new
Well,
strategy.
hot potato. There you
One day, hot, yeah, hot potato, hot potato. Yes.
go.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah, because I don't have to go back to sleep. I got to get those 9 hours. I'm a perimenopausal woman. Marcus Harrison Green, founder, editor of the South Seattle Emerald, author of Readying to Rise, a collection of beautiful essays, and friend. Thank you so much for making time to be here today.
This was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Mm. Everybody, you can find Readying to Rise at most of your favorite book sellers. Maybe go to one that you don't normally go to and support local bookstore. Ask them to order it in. Readying to Rise, Essays by Marcus Harrison Green. We'll see you all next time.